So somebody has Luma up and they're following this. What panel are we doing? No, I'm just playing. I just want to make sure y'all was paying attention. So on this session of how to make $1 million with AI, no. So we have this beautiful panel here, and what we're getting into today, to be official, because real estate and PropTech, cities are products too. And I think the gentleman missed some of it. Y'all came in on the tail end, but you got to hear some of the conversation that we were talking about. I'm talking about you, Christy. Don't look around, I'm talking to you. We got to have some of the conversation about how we're going to build these cities in this economy and how we got to start working together. All right, we only got one problem. Hold on, guys. It's the sugar. The sugars are kicking in. If you don't know about the sugars, that's for people with diabetes, and they have to get bread. And to the people getting the coffee, my coffee people, can you bring it down a little bit? That's why I don't drink coffee. Just drink whiskey instead. So I want to get a quick poll to make sure we're engaged. How many people in this room have purchased, invested in, developed, or brokered real estate in the last 24 months? Okay. How many of y'all got free tickets? No, I'm just playing. Of those who raised their hand, how much of that decision was driven by data you pulled yourself, intuition, or something you heard from a person you trusted? Which was it? Data? Where'd you get your data from? Prop screen? Okay. He coming for one of y'all jobs. He just got into a whole different. You're not on the panel, man. Shorten. Nah, that was good though. Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. And that's the kind of development it takes. It takes that initiative. Anybody else that raised their hand? How did you make your decision? All right, so they're not going to respond. We're going to move it on. Jake, I'm going to jump right to you. So Jake, you run a commercial brokerage. You close deals for developers, investors, and business owners in Tampa Bay right now. What does data saturated actually look like from the ground? And is more data helping, or is it becoming another thing to manage?
So there's two lenses that I like to think about that. On the brokering side and then the developing side. Brokering side, more deal-driven, customer-facing, maybe speed and predictive insights to hunt down the new deals. So certainly the data helps there. And then on the developing side, more asset-driven, maybe more construction and operation focused type of data that helps really move the needle and make the NOI look a little bit better.
And I want to explain to you guys why I started off with that. The PropTech market is projected to reach over $100 billion globally by 2034. Zillow spent $1 billion building iBuying algorithm, lost hundreds of millions, and shut the whole thing down. Somewhere between those facts is the actual story of technology and real estate. And everyone in this room is somewhere inside of that. So this is what this panel is really going to get into. Chris, you've built a product inside the title and settlement lawyer side of real estate. That's where the transaction gets verified, cleared, and closed. What does that vantage point tell you about where value is actually being lost or captured in the deal that most people on the brokerage side cannot see?
I think one of the biggest things that everyone sees when we close any property is the length of time that it has taken us to do that. And I'm going to speak very specific to the residential market, not necessarily the commercial market, because I got a lot more experience over there. When you're going to buy something, someone says, hey, plan on 30 days, right? Like it's almost, we throw that out there like it's seen something, but what actually needs to take place in that 30 days is actually a relatively small amount of work with a few little teeny hurdles along the way. Out at First American, about 5 years ago, we started Project Sequoia, and the goal was to create something called a living title. And the idea is that we could specify homes that were in subdivisions, already had a starter package in title, and we could make them living. And what we did with that was a living title automatically went and updated itself. It looked for its own liens, it looked up for its own mortgages, it looked out for changes with any easements that were in the area, and it started fixing those while it was going. And it became living after a certain set of time where it was like, hey, I'm truly alive. And we could get closings down to 23 minutes. So when you take a 30-day process, now I will discount and say there are edge cases where we would have title conflicts that were just bigger to handle, or so to speak. So what ends up happening is that the mortgage process now becomes the bigger hurdle in the transaction process. Since we started Sequoia many years ago, I think AI, probably about 3 years ago, the program took a very big shift. And I think what we're going to see is that some of these issues that we experience with bigger defects are going to close even faster. Because the reality is it's the human component that was slowing us down. Very specifically going into a county or municipality and putting in a paper request to get that back, right? Now, what is going to happen is that it's going to get solved on the private side, and then slowly these systems are going to infiltrate on the city side. And so where that's really going to benefit everyone here is, and what I talked about time, is that so much can change in 30 days. An interest point on $1 million deal is huge. And 2 points is huge. If we go to war, that's huge, right? Like, so there's so many things that can change. So if we can bring down the time to close on the software side, I think what you're gonna see is that your ability, by shrinking title and the title process, the value that we can create in a short term, right? 30 days is only 1/12 of the year. So I think really that's where we're headed, and where we're gonna see huge value.
I like that. I like that a lot. Christy, your entitled model is built on identifying neglected properties and bringing them back to life, often in communities that larger developers have looked past. What data exists to find those opportunities, and what data doesn't exist yet, but it should?
So the data we have in real estate right now is so spread out between public and private agencies that it's really, really hard to leverage that to get a deal done. So what you end up doing is you build relationships with your local brokers, with your own market. So a lot of what I do is with local real estate developers, empowering people in their community, because you know the vacant lot you drive past every day. You know the downtown building that the commercial storefronts aren't operating, and maybe the apartments upstairs, there's basically a slumlord running them. So you know which ones aren't working right now, and you've got that local knowledge, but what you don't know is, okay, I see it, I wanna build this, what do I do? So I think so if there's anyone out there building this technology, what we're lacking and what we need is we need to take all of the information that's out there and put it in one spot. So when I take, say, a vacant lot, I need to get a survey to see what are the boundary lines of the property that I'm working on. I need to test the soils to see what type of soils I have. I need to know environmental conditions and if it's contaminated. I need to know the zoning for that property and the allowed uses by the city. I need to know where water, sewer, power, telecom, gas are to know, is it even possible? So all of that comes from, because if you have raw land, it doesn't necessarily mean you have sewer in the street or that you have water. So if I take all of that together when I see that property and I could just click in a database and find it, I could quickly know, oh, I can build 22 townhomes because I've got the utility capacity, the zoning allows for it. Great, let me underwrite the numbers, and here's what I can pay for the property.
There's a perplexity on my face because you're talking, unless I misunderstood your tone, you're saying this doesn't exist yet?
No.
Who's on it? Yeah, who's on the AI team? We're going to meet after this. We're going to do a little power. I don't see how that's not built, because the structure of the data is there.
So
it's just pulling it.
Some cities, so an example would be in Beverly Hills, I had a broker call me up. They're like, my client, they're from another country, they've got tons of money. They want to know if this $50 million half-acre piece of land is worth $50 million. And it's like, okay, well, generally what
Got to run an analysis on it to figure it out.
Right, so generally what would happen is that, or actually that one was in West Hollywood. What would happen is they would hire an architect or an engineer or a consultant to do due diligence. And they would go do all the things I just said. And they would research from the city planning departments, like what's allowed, what's the zoning. They'd talk to utility providers and see what capacity is. And I said, you know, let me do a test. And this was maybe 6 months ago. And I go on Perplexity, and I go, And I actually used chat to create a prompt from my experience, and then I put it in Perplexity. Within 5 minutes, it spit out a report that basically gave me 2 highest and best use. One was for luxury condos, and one was for a hotel. And it not only pulled, now you gotta still verify everything, but what it told me then, it also told me construction prices in the market. It told me how many units I could have. It told me how many deals that were similar got approved at planning commission. So now I know I don't have a height issue or a density issue because it's giving me exact things that I can go see what just got approved last month.
I feel like we're about to build a new company on this platform together.
So if we could have that, that would make everyone's lives much easier because development is still complex.
So when we're looking at forecasting and the risk and the model's miss, Tampa Bay's market is telling 2 different stories simultaneously. Tampa proper holding relatively steady while Pinellas County has seen some average home prices drop over 12% year over year. So Ryan, you're operating in a residential model and value add space. When the market shifts, your pipeline shifts. How do you forecast demand in the business where inputs change faster than any model can update itself?
Who here, raise a hand, has received a spam text message or a spam email or a spam call in the last 5 hours? Yes, exactly. So at this point in time in our market, and there is a oversaturation of data. Like, data's everywhere. Data's easy to get. Data's inexpensive to get. I can go pull a leads list of maybe 1,000 names of emails, phone numbers, and stuff like that for $10-15 right now. What everything in tech right now is trying to catch up to is building the systems around making that data, putting that data to good use. I mean, that's why there's so much spam right now, is people are just kind of throwing things out there. So to your point about a good forecasting, requires a good system and a good understanding of what you're actually trying to accomplish, what you're looking to do. So until you kind of have that core philosophy of what you're, as an entrepreneur, looking to do, who you're looking to talk to, what you're looking to accomplish in the next couple of years, and then you build that tech stack around that core philosophy, you're just kind of gonna get lost in all the data. Just gonna get, it's just gonna oversaturate you. You're gonna get overwhelmed by it. So I hope, does that answer your question?
It does, but it also brings a point just because of the way you speak. I feel like one of the things that could happen in a situation like this is if someone took the time to interview you all and to pull this information from your head, you could almost train an LLM to work in that space, because some of the things you're talking about moving at this pace, I can't wait for a white paper to come out. I can't wait for a report. So what do you think that would shift if someone took the data? Just imagine if you all individually had a 2-hour conversation of this is what I'm seeing and this is what I'm going through. Would that possibly train these LLMs and AI to be able to progressively think at a faster pace? And that's an open question to everyone.
You don't really want that, and the reason is because we build software for clients, and why do people buy software? To give themselves a competitive advantage. Every single one of you should desire a competitive advantage against everyone. We do not want a software that you can just go to and everyone's going to make money equally. The world just doesn't work that way. So what exists out there when we look at data, when we look at the ability to tap into the Zillow API, the government, the census data, the zip codes, the polygons, when we look at all that, when you sit there and use your mind and you go, you know what, I wonder if I could build a 50-unit complex in this area, and you're the one that's initiating that. The tools actually exist. It didn't exist a year ago. It exists today. And so you should literally be able to go in and using the right combination of whether you, I recommend Claude, by the way, but you can generate this stuff, interface it with a bunch of $20 subscriptions per month, and create something that's unique to you, that's going to give you a very huge competitive advantage. And if you're building a company, I would say build the tools that are going to give you the competitive advantage, because they're out there and the data's there.
So I like that. I mean, I think there's a competitive side, and then there's a collective side if we're changing an issue and fixing an impact, because we're going to have a density issue that's going to be coming up in Tampa Bay soon. So we might have a different approach. And so Jake and Christy, what I want to ask you two is, and actually Ryan too, but what do we see in Tampa Bay's market that the data isn't telling us? Because I see a perplexity and a problem what we're going to have with parking, which is going to affect engagement, which is going to impact concerts, outings, because there's people now, and I'll say this as a poll, how many people have thought about going somewhere, and the moment you had to think about parking and dealing with parking, you just decided, you know what, I'll just stay home. And see, to me, the data isn't saying that, but that's something I noticed myself, because traffic in Miami was horrific. So I'm like, oh, this is what y'all are dealing with? Yeah, I'm outside. I can tolerate this. So what are we seeing in your intuition, Jake, that the data's just not showing us?
I think the data is not really doing a good job of showing how expensive things really are now in Tampa. I just saw an article about some homeless shelters that were being built. They were, kind of like a glorified sheds. And I made a joke on there that got a lot of likes, is that this is just a $200,000 condo in Tampa. So I think that to really kind of fully understand what's going on with the inflation of the last few years, probably needs a real strong push for a lot more real affordable housing.
I think an element to that is the human input. In the real estate game, it's a business relationship, focus. So when you look at the data around that, you don't have that human perception on things. So, where does it feel like this is a part of town where people are going to want to go? Is Water Street going to be the end game when they finish up their phases of development? Where have people seen this whole economy go the last 10 to 15 years? And what's it going to feel like in this pocket? Or what are new developments happening here? How's that going to change it? So I think we're in a good position when it comes to what data we have. And the data is there as a tool to enhance our business, not to take it over.
Christy, you've worked across commercial, retail, adaptive reuse, clean energy, infrastructure, public-private partnerships. You're not busy at all. How did you think about risk modeling and project that requires buy-in from the municipality? And so are you looking at your private capital partners in the community? Like, how are you actually processing, because you're maneuvering a lot of moving pieces. So how are you doing that yourself?
Yeah, development is inherently risky, and it goes over,
Just to pull it up just a little bit.
3 to 5 years could be a development project. So you've got different economic cycles, you've got different political cycles, you've got different neighborhood groups that are coming or going, you've got people moving in. So really when it comes to development, to piggyback on what you said, it's being a local and knowing what's happening in that community. And that's why I'm a big proponent of locals being the ones doing it, because you know what's missing, you know what we need to have, you know the people who can run the businesses, and we just need to remove the gatekeeping and empower our locals with the tools to do it. And you don't have to know everything, you just have to know how to get the right architects, engineers, brokers, contractors, lenders on your team, and their experience and expertise is what helps you get it to the finish line. Because development is a team sport. You can, unlike a fix and flip house, you can do that on your own, you can hustle and do it. But development truly is a team sport, and you've got the ability to do it. And then we've got different groups and organizations that can help us with grants and funding to help get these developments going, and then grants to get the businesses in and the working capital to go. So yeah, it takes work, and it's more complex to put together, but it's way more impactful and way more rewarding to do it that way.
Now, the part that I was very interested in, and I'm sure everybody else wants to know, the NAR settlement changed everything, changed the game, flipped it on its head. It signaled that the brokerage model is under more constructural pressure than it's been since MLS went online. Meanwhile, platforms like CoStar, Crexy, and dozen AI native startups are all competing for the same broker attention. The question is whether, the tech real estate is enabling brokers or the independent contractors. So Jake, the NAR settlement, the rise of AI-powered valuation tools, the pressure on commission structures, is the independent commercial brokerage model under threat, or is this still actually an opportunity for operators who are willing to be built on a differentiated platform?
I think it's an opportunity for the folks who know what's going on. It kind of weeds out the average brokers and kind of exposes them in a way. where if someone's providing the true value that a broker would/should, obviously subjective, it could help that top tier of brokers kind of take it to the next level.
And I'll add on to that one thing that I'm getting a lot of brokers reaching out to me asking for development advice because they're realizing with AI and technology, the property owners and the people wanting to buy the property can find a lot of the stuff out that brokers used to give. So now brokers are going, oh crap, how do I add more value to my clients because I have deep relationships, but I need to keep adding value. So now they're almost taking it further in either helping the property owner entitle the property for the highest and best use or helping the buyer do the same thing.
I got something to add in on that too. I saw a reel yesterday. It was a great South Park clip where they were making fun of realtors, where it was like, a realtor, the job is to get your picture taken and then get people to like that photo and then want to be friends with that person. So I think people started to just view realtors as a part of the transaction, and a lot of realtors also were just essentially just taking orders and just being there almost like like the same as going to a gas station and going to the register. Here's a stick of gum, I would like to purchase this, and they just ring the register. So I think with AI and technologies the last 10 years, it started to change all industries where it's no longer about just taking orders, being a part of the transaction. You have to be driving the transaction, driving value. A realtor should be the Google of that house. Like, they should understand the neighborhood. They should understand things about the property. They should be able to help their client not make a bad decision that they're going to regret for 10 years. Not just, hey, I'm here to collect a check at the end because we got all the paperwork through.
Yeah, bouncing off what he said, a realtor should support them and kind of be a partner in a project. I mean, whenever I've represented people who've enjoyed the experience, it's because of that. And to separate yourself on the broker perspective, you look at the different PropTechs available now, your data platforms, your CoStar, Reonomy, AI automation platforms for the customer-facing vendor management, whatever that looks like, your smart buildings. So think about the different type of technologies that can make a development better, to track the tenant behavior, to get more data. Even if you go into like tokenization and that whole world, think about it from that perspective on how to turn a traditional illiquid asset and break it down and put it on the chain. That's a whole different world, maybe a whole different conversation, but it's real time and it's happening today. And to understand that is to get ahead of it and be ahead of it, to provide the value that you should really if you're brokering someone who's legit.
And I'm sure it's been said here a lot, but it's not AI that's going to take over. It's people leveraging AI and technology that are going to be the ones leading the way.
I also think, I agree with a lot with what you guys said, but I'm going to be on the other end of the spectrum, which is, and I'm going to speak to residential. So when you guys say the word broker, to me it means more commercial. But when we look at realtors, I think the model of the 6%, and I think we need realtors. We have to have this professional class that oversees and protects all of us. And I truly believe that. Everything from writing the contracts to get everything done, it doesn't matter how well AI explains it, there's a comfort in having someone who who you truly feel has your best interests. The 6% model has gone from when homes were 60 grand, and now our homes are 300. I don't even know what the average price is in this area, but my guess is probably between 300 and 400. And what that means is that if you're only paying down $500 of principal a month, right, 6 grand, it's going to take you 3 or 4 years of principal payments just to pay the person who transacted the sale. And I think that we have a disconnect there, and I do think that it's probably in the best interest of everyone to figure out what the right compensation model looks like. And I think if we get to that point where both sides are happy, and it's like, hey, I got really good value, then I think it works. I
think there was recently a story about a gentleman that ran everything through ChatGPT, did the photos, the marketing of his house, the contract, and he sold the house on his own.
It was like a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I had another question, but I didn't want to walk away from the
But
conversation.
did he have a great photo of himself?
If you saw him, that's not the photo you would want
Yeah.
to post. But I mean, he made it to the news, so he did all right for
There you
himself.
Got eyeballs.
You guys were talking about blockchain, when we were walking up, and you mentioned tokenization. I worked with a young mentee of mine, and this was 4 years ago. They were going to try to tokenize the titles in Miami. And I think the first one they did was actually going to be through 11. When 11 was starting, 11 is a club that was building a residential space. And 11 was going to tokenize the sales of all their apartments, and they were talking about the security of that. This is definitely not on the notes, but since you guys brought it up. So I'm wondering, I heard one of the comments, blockchain is ancient. We're worried about blockchain. Tokens received a bad name because of Miami. Board 8 Yacht Club ran the bill, ran it up, took all the money. Now they're actually opening up a physical space in Miami. Are we ever going to see the tokenization of titles and actually ownership of properties, or is it still too much of a risk?
The answer is yes, but it will be done underneath the companies that currently control that area of the world. And the reason is because when you have so much leverage and you can control a marketplace, right? And it's not one person, it's a group of companies. They basically are transacting this title world, which is a hundreds of billions of dollars industry that you cannot just let go, right? And it's not just at their level, right? All of our pensions, all of our 401ks, everything's rolled up to them. We're all interconnected, right? So you can't let this fall, because then everyone's investments fall. Like, so I think there needs to be I want to say a slow transition, but there's a transition that takes place, but it's going to be led by the leaders. And if they're the ones that push it and adopt it, I think we're going to see an amazing thing happen. I don't think we're going to see some scrappy startup that says, hey, I'm going to put things on blockchain. The problem is because no one else that's in the business is going to let them in. It's a walled garden.
So this is my question. If that's the case, why not start it with something smaller, like cars? Why not just tokenize the title of a car? I'd rather see you tokenize something that could be anywhere from, let's just say, a used car, $500 to $6,500, maybe a Porsche, $120,000, $250,000, versus someone's livelihood. Maybe this isn't the best market to test the tokenization of ownership to a title in. I guess I'm doing a good job when I come.
It's like, you share this video on the web and you become the target. But I've worked with First American. I've worked with several title companies and underwriters, and here's the thing. What do they sell when they sell insurance? They guarantee the fact that you own that home, right? They're there to protect us, right? That I believe that in that mission, hands down. When we get into things like tokenization and we make that process easier, I think we all want that. But we don't want to trade the $7,000 fee in exchange for a $100 fee, right? Because we built an entire industry on that. And that's, I think everyone's very right to be worried about that, because, like I said, there's a huge portion of our society that is underpinned by real estate going up, construction happening, things buying, things selling, and we want to keep that machine going.
He's our token guy.
I'm a what?
You're our token guy.
I actually...
As the black man on the stage, that hit different. I just want y'all to know that.
I love tokens. I think there's a huge use case, and I think you made, Michael, a good point, which is, if it's that valuable, why aren't we starting with other things when we've seen so much scams there? And I think, the whole greed thing got in the way of something that could have been really, really good. And it's going to take us a long time to kind of dig ourselves back out and get the trust. But I know several companies that are working towards this tokenization, and so I do think we're going to see it. I just think it's going to be slower than we're going to see it. I think the biggest value of tokenization would really be the assumption of mortgages in my mind, and passing title over. So like, if someone was looking for a big problem to solve, like, think about this. If you only have 10 to 20% of equity in a home, the transaction value of selling that home is 50%, right? It's huge. It's almost insurmountable. If you can assume a mortgage and we take away all the stuff that goes into preparing that mortgage, but we can still protect the mortgagee, I think there's huge value there. And all of a sudden we unlock this huge percentage of the world's mortgages that only have 10, 20% of equity. I don't think it works when you have 30, 40, 50%, right, where you're getting hundreds of thousands, because people aren't going to come up with 100,000. But if we look at affordability, which I think you mentioned, right? Coming down with a 20% down payment versus assuming a mortgage and being qualified, game changer, right? You still have to come up with the cash, but instead of the 20%, if you look at it transactionally, it's probably closer to 10.
I think we now have y'all have 2 startup companies y'all can run with. I hear 2 companies in my head. I think it happens, but I think it has to be slower. I would tell you to kind of conclude it, as an artist, my fear is that they couldn't even figure out this for pieces of art. So if I can't figure it out for a 18 by 24 canvas, I'm not trusting you're going to figure it out for 5,000 square foot of anything. So that's just my opinion right now. It's a long way to go. And now I want to test the panel. If you guys didn't read your notes, oh well. This is called the deal stack audit. So I'm going to give them a scenario. The whole goal is, for me, I've always felt the best thing to understand from a panel is to put them in a position or a scenario to challenge them to where you actually understand their thought process and how they're going to move forward with things. And you also get to learn about the tools they will use to solve these problems. So we have a moment in a real estate decision that has to be made in Tampa Bay's current market. I'm going to give you the scenario. You're going to give me the feedback. Cool? A tech company relocating a 50-person team to Tampa wants to lease a 8,000 to 1,200 square foot of Class A office, Water Street or Channel Side. The budget is firm. The timeline is 90 days. They have no broker relationship. What information will drive this decision? What's the single biggest mistake they're most likely to make? And what tool or human will help them make this deal happen?
I'm going immediately to the brokers that work in that market, and I'm asking them, do you work with tenants like me in your market, and do you know of all the property owners who are leasing storefront and or potentially have underutilized space in their buildings? And maybe I'm trying to make an off-market deal directly with those building owners, but at first I'm going, who's my local boots on the ground? I have no connections. Who can tell me about this area, who walks this every single day and give me insights? And then I'm gonna go call up property owner Jill and say, hey Jill, I need 8,000 square feet, I've got this much to pay, can we make a deal?
So the point of this is also to point out gaps. You're tied to community, you understand that process. So, Aunt Sophie, right? Aunt Sophie is bringing her team in. She doesn't know this. Where does she go initially to inquire and to make this happen? Because unfortunately, I might have to give Miami a shout out because they had a point of execution to make this happen. But how would I do that in Tampa? Where's that entry point? I don't know the professionals. I just have to get my company here. Who am I talking to?
Is there I don't know this, but is there a city
I had like a
agency?
different answer, but mine was not focused on the broker side, but my company's 46 people. So I'm thinking through it exactly how you said it. And when we looked at getting space, et cetera, the very first thing that I would actually do is I would put all my team members, I'd put all their addresses in, and I'd find out all my drive times, right? Because when I'm looking at something, I'm looking at how it's going to affect everyone in my team. So I would not relocate 5 miles away because I know the strain on my team and what they're getting compensated. So if I start feeding in this data that's like, this is what my team's making, this is where they're living, this is what their commute times, gas just went up to $4 a gallon, I would literally kind of do the reverse, because you kind of picked a location and said, hey, how would I start if I wanted to move here? I would do my research in reverse. I would put it in there and I'd say, show me every location that would minimize the effects on my team. And then I would get these like groups of acreages, right? And then I'd be like, okay, if we moved here, I'd get 5% savings across drive times across my team. If we moved over here, my team's spending more money on things. Now they got to go eat out. I got less places to eat. We're bringing lunch more. And again, I'm not on the sales cycle side, so I don't.
So you're going more for a research of just picking a location, and then after you've researched the location, now you have a target area.
Yes.
Okay. Because in Miami, they have the Beacon
area that way.
I got it. Because in Miami, they have the Beacon Council.
Right.
So when you're building a business and you're bringing your business in, you contact the Beacon Council. They take care of that from top to bottom.
Yeah.
You just call the Beacon Council. They connect you with the brokers. They tell you the possibles. They give you the tax incentives. So I guess who on this stage, not me, who's building the Beacon Council for Tampa? Because I think we have a lot of companies that want to come here. So we need a more centralized point where they can come in and say, hey, the Tampa, let's say it's called Tampa Move. TampaMove.co, when you come in, they're tied to the government. They can get you permits. They can get you everything. But we have to start thinking of ourselves and sculpting ourselves in a different way, because we need systems that I see in other big cities to make this thing happen. Because I don't know Christy. I don't know you. I don't know Jake. I don't know Chris. I don't know Ryan. I know me. And I have 50 people, which means I'm bringing economic impact. I'm bringing houses. I'm bringing people to stay career source.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
So calling your city and going to the Economic Development Corporation and saying, hey, I'm bringing this business to your
So the
community.
EDC would be the voice here.
They would start and then point you to the different city departments or wherever. So you could do it from the private side or the government. And if I were them and I knew exactly where I wanted to go, I'd hit both at the same time and see where I got traction.
I still want somebody to start TampaMove.com. Figure that out for me. So we're going to do part 2. A retired couple owns 1.4 acres, a 1.4 acre commercial lot in East Tampa, zoned for mixed use. The lot has been vacant for 11 years. They've received 3 unsolicited offers from developers in the past 18 months. They don't know if any of the offers are reasonable or good. Who should they talk to?
I mean, my mind first goes to a commercial appraiser. You know, they have an unbiased opinion. Your interest in mind, you could hire them and figure out the true highest best use value on that property. And then kind of reverse engineer it and take that information, maybe go to the brokers who do mixed use projects or, you know, whatever that appraiser may suggest and say, hey, this is what I have available. If you have any interest or if you have any buyers, let's talk.
I like that. I'm going to add one more, and I want you to, and I'm going to tell you, I promise you guys that it makes sense when I finish this. A private equity fund based in Atlanta wants to deploy $8 million into Tampa Bay commercial real estate in 2027. They have no local relationships and are relying entirely on CoStar and third-party markets to identify targets. Good choice or not?
You know, the local building department certainly could help with that, as far as, you know, they know what's being renovated, you know, what contractors are active in the community and stuff like that. So there's a good spot to start there. And then, you know, even just local building supply stores are going to have, you know which contractors are actively doing stuff. So that's probably, I think that might answer your question as far as a place where they can start.
I think what I would try to draw from this is kind of where we talk about the silos, the conversations we're having. There's so much that's happening here, and with the city growing so fast, I would love someone that's in AI, that's in this room. We need to develop this deal stack audit. There should be something that can audit this kind of information and bring in the information we gain from this panel and that knowledge and make it more of a tool that someone can utilize to not even execute it on their own, but just to know the steps and procedures and the processes of getting these things done. Because the problem sometimes is, as experts, we're so knowledgeable, you start to think, oh, you should know it. But we have to always be willing to educate people. But go ahead, Isam.
There's actually a really cool technology that I've seen being deployed. One example I think is called Bordy, if anyone's seen it. And we were actually contacted by the Black Chamber out in California to put together a tool, and we kind of outlined this thing out there. And the idea is, and I think it would actually work really good for real estate, and the idea is, I have a piece of property. This is my basis. This is kind of where I'm at. This is what I'm willing to do. And you kind of lay out all the deal points, and you kind of say what the best is you could do and what the lowest you could do. And what happens is that everyone does this. The P firm comes in and says, I have 8.5 million. I'm trying to get an 8 cap. I have this much construction. I can loan, or whatever the deal is. Then all of a sudden you have AI that's making the deals, right? Because now it has the ability to look at everything and just start. It doesn't do it all at once, but you literally can write these sequences where it goes through this order flow where it's and looking at it, and then it can find a match, and then you'll get a message and say, hey, there's this 1.4 acre piece of property that is looking at development. Would you be interested? And you say, I'm interested. And then all of a sudden, there's a component or a section of AI that's going back, right? And it's starting to find that point where both people are making sense and the deal can get done. Because at the end of the day, if both sides aren't happy, the deal doesn't get done, I think, right? But I think there's a huge piece there that someone could build that would just be huge in this space.
And before I get you guys closing words, I'm sorry, add one more point. I'm going to just say, if you have a question, just be ready because I'm going to take 2 questions before we wrap up. Go ahead.
That rang a bell. There was a company that I came across, a data-driven AI company that basically took an aerial shot of the whole state of Florida and wound all the municipalities and the permits that were put in process for all these larger tracts, for developers. Anything over 10 acres, it was pinged, and it was a software for brokers to hunt opportunities, so they could see the process, 2 to 3 years out. So if you saw, a rezoning happening on a particular parcel, you could reach out to the property owner and see if that might be an opportunity that could be successful for you or your developer.
So that's a little bit of predictive analysis for the outcome of economic development.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool, yeah.
Do we have any questions? Oh, wow. Were y'all that bored or did y'all learn that much? Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned, you're right, like a living will. A living title.
Mm-hmm.
I guess between you guys. Problems that you're having with getting the right information from the
Municipality.
Thank you, everybody. But, cause you're doing it on the AI side, I'll say that. And you're boots on the ground. I can tell that. Being able to get that information and, cause we know in a real estate transaction, a few seconds can almost just blow a deal out the water. Ask me how.
You went through it.
But yeah, what's your biggest issue with being able to get that information, get it in real time, and being able to rely on it?
Sure. So I was the CTO of PropLogix in Sarasota, right? So they're like the largest municipal lien company, especially for unrecorded. And you would be surprised how many municipalities have fax machines, right? So it's just it's the technology stack at the government level. I think needs some significant improvement.
Is that going to move faster than title companies?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. The reality is that because until we get away from where government contracts are awarded off of price and not ability and scale, I think we're going to see subferior. You can, for example, let's go to sunbiz.org, right? Everyone's been to that. I try to pick a site that's government that everyone's been to. If you have a company, you've been there. If you've incorporated, you've been there. That site looks like it came out from 99, 98. So
I was going to say 1994 NT,
yeah.
Windows NT.
Yeah. If you want job security, write in Fortran or something. I don't know. But I think to answer your question very specifically, there's always going to be those what we call edge cases of hurdles that are going to need human intervention that we're going to have to just bullpen through.
No, I would say something that we can do as community members. If you maybe don't want to be the developer, maybe you do go work internally for the city or for the county, and you are their IT person or you are their someone who helps source their software. You can come in and say, I want to actually bring a solution here. I want to automate our system. So you could take the power into your hands doing it that way to help our community while people are also doing it from the private side.
Ryan and Jake, before I close out, is there any last thoughts from you two?
Well, it's being a tech forum and entrepreneur. I think that one of the closing thoughts I'd like to have is as an entrepreneur, your own personal tech stack is crucial. We're talking about data, and it's easy to get lost in what data you have. You need to have a system around what you're collecting and how you're doing your outreach. As someone that's been in sales my whole life, I've got a personal CRM, I've got a personal outreach tool. I'm not just using ChatGPT to like Google. It's like I'm kind of right now. I've got my phone in my pockets. Texting people that are relevant to certain deals. That's all stuff that spend hours and days building, but then it just kind of turns you into a 24/7 living, breathing sales agent.
I guess my last thought comes kind of bouncing off that. Find the technology that enhances whatever you're doing. For us on the real estate side, what's going to help our underwriting, our leasing, our different, things that we have to focus on. And don't just chase the shiny object, because there's a lot of new things coming out there and a lot of innovative things. You're like, wow, that's cool. But what's going to really service that bottom line? And how can you work around that? Or what's going to survive the budget? If it makes dollars, it makes sense at the end of the day. So don't just add on technology just because you want to, try to get that competitive edge. Find something that's going to enhance whatever purpose you're serving.
Every platform that calls itself a city was a decision made by someone with incomplete information, a relationship advantage, and a conviction about what people would want to live near. PropTech is trying to systemize that. The question this room has been working on for the last hour is, what is the part of the decision that should be systematized, and what's the part that only a person standing in the room can make? Get that right, and you can build something. Get it wrong, and you have a really impressive data dashboard on a project that nobody wants but you. We all have an opportunity to build something great, but I want to thank our panelists for the amazing information. If we could, please give them a round of applause.